Hello, my name is Patricia, and this is the Poetry P podcast. Oh my, did I have fun creating this podcast, which I hope will come through as you listen to it. I had the chance to meet with Alvin B Cruz and have him read and discuss some of his work, as well as other things, with me. I recorded it so you can listen to it too. I think you're going to enjoy it. Do let me know. And remember, if you have a book of Japanese short form poems, haiku, senryu, haibun, tanka, that you would like to get me to review or come along and do a reading for here at Poetry P, do get in touch. I will need a hard copy of your book in order to review it. So before we get going and meet Alvin, let me give you a few reminders. It's September 2023 here at P Towers, and it's a busy old month. I've set you some challenges. From the 1st to the 15th, for example, you should be submitting haiku using kirei, the cut. The simply delightful Carla Ramesh gave us some tips in her workshop in episode 22 of this series. That link, as well as many other links, are in the show notes. Do go to the website and check them out. It's also split sequence time from the 16th to the 30th of September. You can send them as solo or collaborative poems. The criteria is on the submissions page of the website. And of course, Peter Jastrzemski has been on the podcast a couple of times, and you know what? He's going to be on it again soon. And he is the originator of split sequences. So do go and check out his episodes and get an idea, a feel for what you should be submitting to us. And last, definitely not least, don't forget our monthly video prompt on Poetry P's YouTube channel. Leave your poems in the comments for a chance to be on the podcast and in the Poetry P journal. Now, have you packed your bags? Because we're going quite a distance today. We're off to the Philippines to chat with Alvin B Cruz, a widely published short form poet. Our flight is boarding and we're off. Alvin, welcome to the podcast, and thank you very much for joining me from your home in the city of Manila in the Philippines. It's really lovely to see you.
Hi, Patricia. Thank you for inviting me here. It's my pleasure.
It's a great pleasure to have you, honestly. And for those of you who don't know Alvin, his haiku, senryu, tanka, and haibun have been published in many print and online journals, such as Modern Haiku, Wales Haiku Journal, Presence, Whiptail, Poetry P, and lots more. He's won awards and recognition from several international competitions, including the Haiku Society of America's Senryu Award, in which he got second place in 2021. The Irish gave him an honourable mention in 2021 as well in their Haiku Society competition, and the Tokusen second prize in the Kuzumakura Haiku competition was awarded to him in 2022. And he's incredibly successful, and we will actually come back to his successes a little later in the podcast. Alvin knows a wee bit about writing, I believe. Alvin, I think you're a full-time member of the English facility at the Far Eastern University in Alabang in the Philippines. Am I right?
That's right, Patricia. I'm a full-time faculty member there. Mhm.
And do you specialize in anything in particular, or are you a sort of generalist?
Um, Basically, I teach English courses like business communication, but sometimes I teach also art appreciation.
Oh, okay. Art appreciation. I think we might mention something a little bit about art in a short
Mm,
while.
right.
Now, you currently have 3 books under your belt:
Mhm.
Sunsets are Sonnets and Other Poems, Written on Water, and of course, the book we're going to read from today, Paper Cranes. We're going to talk about paper cranes as we go along, but Alwyn, tell us a little bit about Sunsets are Sonnets and Written on Water.
Okay. Well, Sunsets Are Sonnets. It's my first book of poetry. It contains my earlier poems, which were more in free verse, Patricia. So I started writing poetry first in using free verse style. But that book also contains my first or my early haiku, my first attempt at haiku. So there are two parts of that book. No? And then Written on Water, my second book, is my collaboration with my sister, who's a watercolor artist.
Mhm.
I'm very proud of this book because it also won the Filipino Reader's Choice Awards for poetry last year.
Oh, wow.
I'm also proud of it because it's my first time to work with my very talented sister, who's an artist. Mm, yeah,
So the art, the appreciation and love of art really runs in the family.
I guess so. That's
Has she started writing poetry as well?
no, no, no. She's really into more into visual arts. Yeah,
Mm.
she's now taking her MFA in painting. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that Sunsets and Other Sonnets, you wrote your first haiku. Tell us how you got into haiku. What got you interested?
Oh, well, I got into haiku during my first year of teaching. No? At that time, I was teaching literature to high school students, Patricia. It was part of the curriculum then. So I also had the chance to read the works of Basho, Isa, and the like. No? That was my first encounter with them. But it wasn't love at first sight kind of thing at that time, as I was more into writing free verse, as I said, uh, it was only many years later, in 2017 to be exact, that I took haiku seriously. I began writing haiku in the traditional style first, no? 575. And then the pandemic happened, no? Um, that was when I was introduced to modern haiku in English, Patricia. So from then on, I have been writing haiku in modern style almost every day, exploring the creative possibilities of writing modern haiku.
Now that's interesting. So, when you were teaching the high school kids um, haiku, were you teaching them the traditional 575?
Yes, exactly. Because that's my first knowledge, of haiku, the traditional style.
Mhm.
So I was also writing the 575 then. Yeah, so that's how but they loved it. They enjoyed it. My students loved it. Mhm,
I was talking, I forget who I was talking to about children writing haiku,
mhm.
but children, young adults, they're really very good at haiku because they haven't lost that imagination that we get um, when we're older. We sort of
Right,
get into the realism of life, and we can lose that ability to imagine things.
true.
Oh, right. So that's really interesting. So your style changed, as mine did, in fact, as you got to know sort of contemporary haiku.
Right.
And I think it's fair to say that Paper Cranes is a book of contemporary haiku senryu. Would you agree with that?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, that's my
So,
more.
Alvin, shall we treat ourselves to a reading from the book? And perhaps you'd like to read the first of our chosen poems to us.
Okay, here you go. Blank Scrabble tile. We argue over the word ma. Blank Scrabble tile. We argue over the word ma.
I'm guessing this is sort of taken from a sort of realistic experience, and I wondered whether you were actually arguing over something other than the word "ma." Was there something in the background that was troubling you?
Well, actually, this haiku was inspired by true events because my family loves to play Scrabble together, and we're, we're very competitive when it comes to this game, we love word games. So we would always end up arguing over certain words. Oh, this does not exist. This exists. And we would also argue about certain rules.
Hmm.
So in this haiku, what I wanted to focus on was the word ma, no? The Japanese concept of ma, which means a pause in time or emptiness in space. Hence the connection with the blank Scrabble tile.
Yeah, it's a brilliant connection. It's very, very good. And I'm very pleased, Alvin, to hear that there are families other than my own who have these sorts of arguments when playing board games. I think we're terribly competitive too. Yeah, you probably wouldn't want to be in the same room as us, or maybe actually your family would be the perfect match for,
Oh, no.
for us.
Sometimes it gets really bloody.
Yeah, we've not spilt blood yet, but yeah, it's come close. Oh dear. And the other thing that occurred to me actually when I was reading this poem in the book, I think I asked you, had you ever considered centering this poem?
Oh, now that you mentioned it, Patricia, I think centering the haiku is a great way, of adding emphasis to the word ma, no?
Hmm.
Which I'd like to focus on. No? So, centering the poem makes it look like an inverted pyramid, actually, no? So that's a really good idea, no? To center.
I'm getting more and more interested in how things look. I suppose because I'm editing the journal, it's become more apparent to me that you can make a great effect, or you can have some effect on the poem by changing
Mm,
the way it's placed on this page, which goes to the idea of Ma as well. So
That's
it works works well. Thanks, Alvin. Next one, please.
karaoke night, singing a duet song alone. Karaoke night, singing a duet song alone. And there's another one. Pillow shot, I dream of Ozu on a tatami mat. Pillow shot, I dream of Ozu on a tatami mat.
Thank you. And I was telling Alvin before we started that my daughter is currently in the Philippines. I don't know
What?
actually how far she is from you, but she'll be passing through Manila. And she sent me lots and lots of photographs of her and her friends doing karaoke. So I wondered, Alvin, is it popular over there?
Oh, yes, Patricia. Almost, when there's birthday celebrations, in every corner of the street, you'll hear people sing. Filipinos love music. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
our life. Yeah,
Oh,
we just,
that's wonderful. I mean, at first, I thought this was a little bit sad because you're singing karaoke or you're singing a duet alone.
I know.
But I think there's a little bit of humor in it too. What do you think?
Yes. Yeah, it's kind of ironic, right? But I really just want to express, how, you know, express a longing, no, the longingness there. Hmm.
Good job. Thank you. And then I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Pillow Shot. I dream of Ozu on a tatami mat.
Hmm.
There will be people who might not get the linkages within this poem, particularly those of us who are not familiar with the work of Ozu. And I believe he's a famed Japanese film director and screenwriter. So, can you tell us a little bit about that?
When I wrote this haiku, no, it was originally an entry to a contest, a haiku contest, which is called the Pula International Haiku Contest. That was in 2021,
Mhm.
and the theme was cinema. Okay, cinema. So it inspired me to write a haiku about one of my favorite directors. You mentioned Yasuhiro Ozu. So at that time, I had just watched some of his well-known films, no? Like Tokyo Story. I don't know if you're familiar with this. Floating Weeds and Early Summer. Those were his classic films. And Yasuhiro is known for his unique cinematic style, which is called the pillow shot, which is the first line of the haiku. No? And pillow shot means a cutaway to a visual element. No? For example, in his movie Late Spring, uh, the daughter, no, one of the character there, the main character accepts her fate, and then the camera cuts to a flower vase in an empty room. No? For a long time, you know, that stillness, an empty, a vase in an empty room. So it's pretty much like a haiku, right? Like, that moment in time that so beautiful. So that's probably the reason why I fell in love with his films, because it has some semblance to write to haiku.
It strikes me also that it's about juxtaposition again,
Yes.
and maybe a concept of ma comes into it, and many other Japanese techniques and aesthetics that we'll recognize because we're haiku poets.
Right. I also love the way Ozu's films portray the everyday lives of ordinary people with honesty and simplicity, just like the haiku.
I'm guessing you don't speak Japanese. I could be wrong. Do you speak Japanese, Alvin?
No,
Okay.
I lived in Japan for a year, but I never really learned to speak the language. I just love the culture, but I couldn't. It's difficult. It was difficult, really. Maybe it comes with age. You can't memorize the vocabulary and all that.
Yeah, I can understand that totally. Trying to learn. I'm trying to learn a very simple, well, for a
Mm.
European, a relatively simple language, Spanish at the moment, and
Oh,
my head, I can do the basics, but my head will not take in anything complicated. So it's almost certainly my age, but I can imagine Japanese is much more difficult because, of course, you
mm,
have the different alphabet with different symbols and so on. So
mm.
yeah, don't worry about it. I think you'll be fine.
Searching for my ikigai, blue sky. Searching for my ikigai, blue sky.
And I think ikigai means the meaning of life. So you were searching for your meaning of life.
That's right.
When I read a few of your poems now, you have this one, you have the link to Ozu, and you've mentioned the word ma in the first one. You're very confident using these Japanese terms or Japanese culture, and you're happy to challenge other poets to learn about them. Where do you get that confidence from?
Since I never really spoke the language, right? But yeah, I wonder too. Well, ever since I started writing haiku, I have been interested in learning more about the traditional Japanese way of life and philosophy.
Mm.
So I would read more books on Japanese culture, philosophy, literature, and of course, watch Japanese films, no? Like those of Ozu. So when I use Japanese terms in my haiku, uh, I intended it for the haiku community, and I assume that they are more or less familiar with these terms or concepts. I hope so.
I think we know a lot of them, don't we? As we learn as we go along. But sometimes I don't use too many, should we say, non-English terms because I worry that people won't understand them or they won't go and look them up. And I
Mm.
really admire you for just going for it and you know
Yeah,
putting them in, and challenging us. If we don't know it, go
that's
look it
right.
up.
Yeah.
Um, and as we talk, I wondered. You mentioned you're interested in haiku. You're interested in Japanese culture. Was that why you went to live in Japan?
Yes, that's one of the reasons, Patricia. But before that, I have been teaching Japanese children in a Japanese school in Manila for 13 years.
Oh, right.
Longest. The longest ever I have stayed in one school.
Wow. So I think you have a tanker for us next.
Okay. Yes, this is a tanka. Window seat. A bus ride with grandma. Way back when my dreams took the shape of clouds. Window seat. A bus ride with grandma. Way back when my dreams took the shape of clouds.
I love those last two lines. My dreams took the shape of clouds. Wonderful. Now we're going to be talking about tanker next year on the podcast. But perhaps in passing, I could say that the traditionally tanka were love poems and maybe related to music and songs, which is one of your interests, I know. And they do tend to be more overtly emotional and subjective than haiku. And if people are interested, before we get to doing more about it on the podcast, I'll put some links in the show notes so you can go and have a look at that. But I certainly feel the emotion in this poem, and it feels like a love poem to grandma. I'm guessing that's what you were aiming for.
Yes, yes, that's right. I wrote this tanka in memory of my grandmother who raised me because my parents were always busy making a living for the family. But I never really had a chance to show my grandma how much she meant to me and how grateful I was to her. So this poem is my way of honoring her.
It's a shame, really, she didn't get to hear it. It's
So,
such a beautiful piece of work, and the line. There's another line that I think is really interesting. Way back when. So you've got window seat, a bus ride with grandma. Way back when my dreams took the shape of clouds. But that way back when certainly acts as a pivot, doesn't it? Because it goes so well with the first half, and it sort of links to the second half too. I think that's a wonderful piece of work, a wonderfully crafted piece of work, Alvin. It's lovely.
thank you, Patricia.
And we're going to stay with love with our next two poems, I think.
Okay. Rain song. I spell love backwards on a window pane. Rain song. I spell love backwards on a window pane. Lips I kissed a while ago, now playing harmonica. Lips I kissed a while ago, now playing harmonica.
Thank you. I love them both. Very different images for me. The first one is sort of it feels a bit teenagey, the sort of thing you do as a teenager on the bus on a rainy day.
That's
Spelling love backwards on the window pane. I love it. Were you that teenager in love on the bus?
right. No, recently. No, I'm just kidding. No, no, no. It's just, one of those, days when I felt more, romantic.
Oh,
One,
bless.
day- one of those days, Patricia.
It's lovely. And then you have Lips I Kissed a While Ago, now playing harmonica. Tell me, where does that one come from?
The idea for this haiku came basically from my love of music, Patricia. Uh, Aside from poetry, music is one of my passions. As I said earlier, Filipinos love music a lot. Karaoke, now rain song, and then harmonica. Well, by writing this haiku, I wanted to show how a person can quickly move on from one passion to another. Huh?
Hmm.
Um, um, Here we can see how the person suddenly shifts from romantic passion to his love for music, which is almost like an extension of that passionate kiss
Hmm.
a while ago. Yeah.
What I loved about it was the connection, the lips connecting the two parts,
It's
as in, lips I kissed, but those lips, same lips, kissing whilst playing the harmonica, because it's very much a piece of music, an instrument you use with your mouth, isn't it? I thought that was a great juxtaposition, really. Very, very, very good. And sadly, we are very close to being at the end of our reading. But I wanted to hear you read what is probably my favourite poem in the book. It's much more traditional in terms of haiku, almost a 575, and it has the familiar shape and, of course, a seasonal word, the butterfly for spring. So, Alvin, could you do me the honour of reading my favourite one, please?
Sure, Patricia. Barefoot in the grass, on the edge of my shadow, a butterfly. Barefoot in the grass, on the edge of my shadow, a butterfly.
I love the images. I love the idea of being barefoot on the grass. There's fewer things more wonderful than just feeling the grass under your feet. And then the idea of that shadow, the butterfly, just sort of popping into your vision at the edge of your vision. It's beautiful.
Thank
But then,
you.
of course, with a haiku, you have the first impression. But when you're intrigued by something, you get that you start to talk, start to think about it, don't you? And this one, I think for me, is an expression of hope. It really speaks to me of hope. As I said, for me, a butterfly anyway is a sign of spring, the first sign of spring. My garden is covered in them now in the summer, with all over the lilac bushes in my garden, and unfortunately also on my kale plants. But hey, I'm happy to share. So it's one of hope, but it also speaks of because it's a spring one, it speaks to me of sort of the depression, the coldness, which is particularly relevant to me, of winter, leaving all that behind and coming into a really hopeful period of spring and summer. Is that something that you are going for, or am I totally off point with this poem?
No, I think you're right. I mean, yeah, my intention was really to write a poem about hope, because basically, and what a way to end, this in our interview, because my book is really about hope, Patricia. As it is written at the back of the book, it's an ode. Paper Cranes is an ode to our undying hopes and dreams. Um, so this poem was inspired by, well, many of my poems were inspired by fond memories of my travels, Patricia, and this haiku is one of them. I love I love being barefoot. As a matter of fact, now I am barefoot. Whether it's on the beach,
Mm-hmm.
like Kai, in the grass, and even at home right now, it makes me feel so comfortable and free. Plus, I feel so grounded, no, literally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I wrote this poem both as out of memory and imagination.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally agree with you, Patricia, when you said that this poem is really about hope. And reading this poem, perhaps one can see himself as the butterfly on the verge of finally embracing the light.
I like that idea. That's a great idea. Thank you. But we're not quite finished. We're not quite finished. I've sprung this one on you because we have something to another thing to celebrate. You received an honourable mention in this year's Robert Spies Memorial Awards over at Modern Haiku. Congratulations! And
You,
for anyone who wants to go over and have a read, I'll put the show notes so you can have a read of the poem and other poems and the commentaries, because the commentaries are always a really useful educational tool for us as poets. And I would love, Alvin, if you would read this poem to us. But as I sprang it on you, can you remember it?
oh yes, of
Oh,
course,
good.
Patricia. Yeah, every word.
Excellent. Your memory is much better than mine. Well done. Go for it.
Okay. So this is the one that won honorable mention at Robert Spies Memorial Haiku Awards. Finding where I belong, the empty space in a jigsaw puzzle. Finding where I belong, the empty space in a jigsaw puzzle.
And how fitting, actually. We started the reading with some Ma, and we're sort of finishing the reading with a little bit of Ma.
Mm. You.
Congratulations, Alvin.
Thank you, Patricia.
My pleasure. I'm so proud for you. And we just have one, or I just have one last question for you. It's not complicated. Don't worry. I'm not going to spring something terrible on you. Where can our listeners find your books?
Okay. All right. Well, my books are available at central.com.ph. That's central.com.ph. Yeah. So, because my books were all published here in the Philippines. So, yeah.
Surely good. And don't worry if you weren't quick enough to catch that. I will put the link in the show notes if you want to go follow
Thank you.
that up. Alvin, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I've really enjoyed listening to you and your poems.
Patricia, me
And
too. Thank you so much.
it's my pleasure. And don't forget, if you would like to hear these poems again, you can listen as much as you like to the podcast, or you can go and pick up a copy of Paper Cranes. And Alvin, have you got a copy there so we can have a look at the front? Because there's a lovely picture on the front
Oh
too.
yeah, hold on.
And one last question. Did you ask your sister to help you with the front page or not?
No, this was done by my niece. Yeah, she's my niece. Yeah, she also
Woohoo!
did the cover of Sunsets Are Sonnets and Other Poems. Yeah.
Oh, wow. What a talented family.
Yeah, she's taking up architecture in the US. She's into arts also.
Oh, wow. Well, good luck to her with that. And what a great job she did with your cover. Again, thank you so much, Alvin.
Oh, thank you too, Patricia. I had fun. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And don't forget, go and read the show notes and find out where you can get hold of Alvin's books.
Thank you.
Well, what did I tell you? Wasn't that fun? There was some great poetry, a little bit of cultural education, certainly for me, and a new friend. What could possibly be better? Thank you, Alvin. Now, don't forget to check the show notes for all the links you'll need for today's podcast. And of course, if you have a few coppers to spare, maybe you'll head over to Buy Me a Coffee and buy the podcast a coffee. I need to buy quite a few books to do the research for the next series of the Poetry Pete podcast. So any help you can give me would definitely be appreciated. Thank you very much. And don't forget to get your submissions to us in September. I hope you enjoy the challenges. And of course, if you're coming to this late, we're always up to something. Do check the submissions pages and send us whatever we need. So until next time, keep writing. And I've not put the poems Alvin read in the show notes today. They are in his book though. And if I've left anything else out, do not hesitate to email me and tell me. And of course, tell me what you think of the podcast, because I can't make it better without your help. Ciao!